Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Astro Consciousness channel. I'm Millie, and I am here to give you your forecast for the week of September 9th through the 15th. In this channel, we talk about the energy of the week ahead and how you can integrate it into your personal and spiritual growth. So, as always, let's begin with a recap so that we can understand where we are headed. So we're coming from a week, the first week of September, which was incredibly active. And I received several messages, voice notes, um, Instagram messages, DMs, emails. I received messages from everywhere about things happening that felt like they came out of nowhere, conversations that came up to the surface, whether people had them or realized that they have to have them, which is one of the things that I mentioned in last week's forecast. And the reason for that is that Uranus and Mercury had their final square together, right? Mercury in Leo, Uranus in Taurus. I've talked about that a few times and I'll repeat it one more time, right? This is a story that had a beginning, a middle, and an end. The beginning was in July, the middle was in August during the Mercury retrograde, and the end was technically really the first week of September, where those two planets had a final square. And that could have manifested in a few ways. The way that I saw it manifest in real life, very Mercury square Uranus, unexpected news, surprising news, the realization, I have to get this out, I have to have this conversation, certain conversations actually being had, and the conversations that were had having a sense of liberation. Uranus is involved. And realizing, oh, when I have difficult conversations, this doesn't have to mean an end. This doesn't have to mean that we are bad. It just means that we are human beings having a human experience, and that sometimes we have blind spots in which we are going to not show up in the best way for one another sometimes. It's really interesting to observe how differently we are being asked, and perhaps it feels like we're almost being forced to hold relationships differently. So I think a lot of times, and I want to stress this because I think it's so important, because we immediately go to fear. We are a society that jumps to fear almost immediately. If it means that it's not going to turn out the way that I wanted to, that I envisioned, that I thought, then that means it's bad. Guys, that is a very small, limited way of thinking. And by small and limited, I'm not merely talking about positive and negative. I'm talking about we are missing the nuance and the complexities of being in relationship. Think about this. When we are going through something, when we're processing something, when we're working through something, there are a lot of things that we realize about ourselves and about how certain situations shaped us and about certain dynamics that we have with people, that in those moments, we have an opportunity to, we have a few opportunities. And one of them is, okay, I realize how I allowed certain things to happen. I realized how much I played into certain dynamics in relationship, but I'm choosing to be kind to myself. I'm choosing to be compassionate with myself, because that's really the only way to move through this, to move through what I'm processing. What we forget is to do the same in relationships. Now, what I mean by this is that this doesn't mean that we excuse anyone's behavior. But what begins to happen when we can understand why someone would do something and still keep a healthy distance between what they choose to do versus your understanding of why they would do what they do, if there is that, we have a much more easeful pathway forward. Now, that's very Libra. That's very Libra. I think my Libra ascendant is really coming through right now, trying to find the understanding of both sides of the story. Now, are there certain things that have to come to an end? Are there certain relationships that might have to come to an end? I think so, because the energy that we are under, especially in eclipse season, can lend itself for that. But here is another way, and this is where you have to be your own oracle. This is where you have to come back to yourself and assess your own situation, your own relationships, so that you can assess where you are. It can also mean that certain dynamics, certain cycles, certain ways of relating in an important relationship come to an end. And that means that that relationship then takes on a different turn. I wanted to stress this because, again, we tend to be a society that leans into all or nothing. So you mean to tell me that my relationship is going to end? I don't know. Is it? You know your situation better than I do, better than any astrologer. When we jump to fear, when we jump to the worst case scenario, we immediately block the universe's desire, the universe's unconditional loving energy of support. I'm laying all of this out because that is what the energy feels like right now. It's like, I'm not really sure. I don't know where to start. I don't know what to do. I don't know when this ends. I don't know where this begins. Absolutely. Why? Because last week we had Mars and Gemini square Neptune and Pisces. And I talked about this feeling of disorientation. I don't know where I begin. I don't know where this ends. I don't know what to do. I don't know where to begin. What just happened? What do I do now? Right? And in addition to that Mercury square Uranus, which was about potentially receiving news that kind of halted you on your tracks, or, really shifted the direction that you thought you were headed in. Why is this happening? Individually, it depends on the message that you're meant to receive during this eclipse season. But when you come back to yourself, and you genuinely ask yourself, what brings me peace? Where is my sense of grounding within myself? This isn't just about landing on an answer. This isn't just about knowing exactly what you're going to do next. This is about really moving with this energy, moving with this season that is asking you to be patient, to dig a little deeper. And when it comes to relationships, understanding that having very honest conversations that for some can feel confrontational is actually a healthy thing to do, not just for yourself, but potentially for the relationship itself. We have to be willing to go there with the people in our lives, whether it's romantic relationships, friendships, business partnerships, business agreements. We have to be willing to go there and trust that that conversation can be the opportunity to actually create a closer bond, to actually create another level of intimacy, depending on the relationship that you're dealing with. So I bring all of this up because I noticed that September really shook us up in many ways. I know I had my share of important, difficult conversations. I took the rest of the week to really allow these things to land. The upcoming week, I think I'm probably going to do the same, right? Because the upcoming week of the 9th through the 15th is a week that leads us to the first eclipse of the season. Speaking of eclipse season, make sure that you get your eclipse guide, right? Either here in this barcode or in the link below. Thank you all so much. For those of you who have purchased it, share in the comments how the lessons are landing for you, how the meditations are feeling. I created that guide so that you have a glimpse ahead of time as to what's coming and all of the lessons and what the season overall means. So make sure you don't miss out on that. Okay, so as we head into the week ahead, and by the way, the week of the 9th through the 15th, there aren't many transits. There aren't many important aspects. So this weekly forecast is actually quite short. But it is all leading us to the first eclipse of this eclipse season, which is on September 17th. So with that said, let's get started. So for this week, I'm going to focus on two major events. One is taking place on September 12th, which is the Sun in Virgo square Jupiter in Gemini. And the second is taking place on September 14th, which is Venus in Libra trine Jupiter in Gemini. So just because those events take place on those specific dates doesn't mean that we are not experiencing that all week long. We most certainly are experiencing both of those events all week long, so be mindful of that. So some of the more traditional interpretations of a Sun square Jupiter are egotism, grandiosity, arrogance, self-importance, self-inflation, and with that, the inability to be self-aware in a very clear way. So here we have the Sun in Virgo. And the Sun in Virgo is concerned with discernment. And in order for there to be discernment, there has to be a willingness to look at all of the components of the things that we are facing, of the things that are before us. Now, Jupiter in Gemini is all of the information, all of the facts, all of the tidbits, all of the things, right? Times 100. Notice how both the Sun and Jupiter are in signs that are ruled by Mercury. And Mercury, at this point in this week, is finally in the sign of Virgo. So Mercury is in one of its home signs. Why does this matter? Because Mercury being in Virgo is an energy about looking at all of the details. It is about being discerning. It is about taking stock. It is about taking audit of things. So how does that translate into our day-to-day this week? So we have Mercury, the planet of communication, and we have the Sun, which is the luminary of the identity, of the ego, of the vitality. So this is us showing up in our lives and saying, okay, this is what life is showing me right now. I'm taking stock, I'm taking audit, and perhaps this is coming from a place, the sense of pause might be coming from a place of whatever the first week of September showed you, right? And you might be taking a step back and saying, okay, what works, what doesn't, what is within alignment of what I desire, of who I am now? What do I want? Do I want to keep doing this now? So let's say that the first week of September in which something was removed from your life, right? It could be work, projects, person, whatever it is. There was a sense of removal from your life. And perhaps the initial reaction was to, freak out and say, what is happening? I can absolutely see that with the energy of the first week of September. There's nothing wrong with that, right? There was this element of shocking, of something either shocking that felt like it came out of nowhere, or saying, I can no longer deny this, right? And so the second week of September is about, again, taking stock, asking those questions I asked a few moments ago. Is this in alignment with me? Do I even want it? The thing that was removed, right, from me, or the thing that I realized that I have to do, the conversation that I realized that I have to have, how does that actually support me? How does it actually support me in the long run? Anytime anything in my life is surprisingly removed, that is spirit, that is a universe working in my favor. It may feel shocking. I may need time to process it. I may ask why. I may do all of the things. And yet, if it was out of my control, that is for a reason. Okay. So this week with the Sun square Jupiter And all of that Virgo energy, this is not just about listing all of the things that have gone wrong. This is about, yes, taking stock, taking audit, but in order for you to genuinely see if all of these things align with you, right? Or to see what is in alignment with me now, who am I now? And here's the thing, you may not realize that right now, because for some people, August and that first week of September resembled or was a form of an identity shift and really landing on a new sense of who you are at this moment in time. And having, again, conversations, realizations of, oh, this is who I really am. And this can be like, I used to play this role in my family. I no longer play this role in my family. I was married and now I'm divorced. We were best friends and now we're not. Like this identity shift that you're moving through, that takes time. Those things take time. Any sense of identity shift that you have been having this year, but especially was really highlighted in August and the first week of September, you have to understand that the decisions, learning to make the decisions from this place, you're getting to know this version of you, hence the audit, hence the taking stock, because at this point, it's just about listing the things that have happened and asking yourself, how do they land for me? How do I feel about it, right? This is especially true because, again, the first week of September and that weekend of September 7th and the 8th, we had the sun in Virgo in opposition to Saturn in Pisces. And that opposition represents, what do I actually want to be responsible for? The sun in Virgo represents our ego, our identity. It's us taking stock, taking audit of all of the things that happen in our lives. And the Saturn in Pisces is the conversation with the self or with another of, what do I actually want to take responsibility for? What is actually my responsibility? How do I need help or assistance in some way? And if there's a sense of overwhelm, because that sun square Jupiter, there can be a sense of overwhelm. All of the things fall on me. And if that is the case, then you have to ask yourself why. Never do we ever find ourselves in a position where everything falls on us because we have healthy boundaries. When we feel that everything falls on us, that is the first indicator of checking our boundaries. What are we taking on? Who are we having conversations with? Who do we need help from? What do we need to let go of? Where do we need to loosen up a little bit to not expect perfection? Another thing that is important with the sun in Virgo square Jupiter in Gemini, for those of you who, whether you work for yourself or not, when it comes to like business, when it comes to work environment, right? Both Gemini and Virgo are energies of communication, of getting your tasks done, of the day-to-day, of daily routine. This week is going to be a great indicator for that. Where do I feel overwhelmed in my work? Where do I feel overwhelmed in my business? Where are my boundaries? What does my organization look like? And it's not about fixing something right now. It's about the understanding how those things that are being reflected back to you, what does it mean within? And I think that a lot of this is going to have to do with boundaries. Why? Because Sun square Jupiter is an exaggeration of something, is more. It can be overindulgence, right? Not knowing when to stop. Another thing you're going to want to be mindful of this week with that square is about how much you're shopping, how much you're spending money, right? So be mindful of that. And also be very mindful with the lower expression of Virgo energy, which is to go into judgment of yourself. See, this is what happens. I thought I had worked through that. I should have known better. I should have done things differently. I should have planned better. I should have. We have to remember that the energy that we are experiencing right now is happening so that we let go of the superfluous, so that we let go of this sense of control. Virgo is really interesting because Virgo a lot of times is described and perhaps even judged as a controlling sign, but Virgo is actually a mutable sign. What do mutable signs have in common in the zodiac? That they adapt to change. So how do we, and Gemini in itself is also a mutable sign, the adaptation to change. So what is the point of being able to look at the details, Virgo, to take stock and audit of our lives and what's happening, Virgo, right? What is the point? So that we say, okay, maybe things are not going to turn out the way we thought. I had a plan. It's not going the way I thought it would. So how is life asking me to be flexible with the details that it's giving me? How is life asking me to be flexible with the outcome that it's reflecting back to me? We have to be willing to be flexible. When we are flexible, we leave space and room for the unconditional love of spirit to come and guide us and help us and bring us solutions and bring us a different way, bring us a different path. This is the importance of that. When we think solely from our little human minds, which is very possible this week with the activation of Virgo and Gemini, ruled by Mercury, the planet of cognitive thought, the planet of how we speak, how we think on a daily basis. When we solely think from that place, the world gets very, very small and very overwhelming. And for those of you who have the eclipse guide, I talked about what Pisces is gifting us with. And what Pisces is gifting us with is with the remembering, you don't have to do it alone. You can leave room and space open in your heart to receive a different level of guidance. This is truly calling us back to the connection with spirit and source. And spirit and source will then guide you and say, have this conversation in this way. Don't be afraid. Call this person. Let go of this thing. But we keep trying to function solely from just our rational human mind, and that is very small. It is very limited. And until we create a healthier, a much more intentional connection with spirit and source, we are not going to understand how to actually utilize our mind instead of it utilizing us. If there is any lesson you want to take into account for this week, is that. Is my mind ruling my life, or am I the master of my mind? And being the master of our minds comes from having a connection to source and spirit, which is essentially us. It's essentially our soul. It's the deepest part of us. And sometimes the universe puts us in situations that feel overwhelming externally so that we have no other choice but to go within. Now, the second event of the week that technically takes place on September 14th is Venus in Libra trine Jupiter and Gemini. But as I mentioned a little earlier, this energy is active all week. I love this. I love this so much because it is a very supportive energy, especially if we feel we need to come back to a conversation with someone, if we need to repair something, if we need to have one of those difficult conversations that we may have realized we need to have. I think this energy can even lend itself to renegotiations and contracts with people especially in business exchanges, okay? Venus in Libra is very much the energy of seeing both sides of the story, right? Seeing what each person has to say and the willingness to meet each other halfway. Now, does that mean that that's exactly how it's going to happen? No, right? Everyone's on their own path. But here's the thing. So Venus in Libra is about, okay, let's sit across from each other. You say what's on your mind, I'll say what's on my mind. Let's be diplomatic about this. Let's really be respectful about this. That is the essence, that is the energy of Venus in Libra. And the ultimate goal there is, let's relate Venus from an objective place, Libra. There is an openness and an opportunity to understand each other much more clearly, right? If I'm hearing you correctly, what you're saying is, okay, well, what about this? What about this alternative? What if we did things differently? That is the essence of Venus and Libra. And there has to be a willingness to approach things in that way. That means that the trine to Jupiter and Gemini is activated even more, because essentially Jupiter and Gemini is the facts. It's the facts that you are giving each other, right? Especially if this is happening in a relationship with you, any type of relationship, personal or professional. Okay, so tell me what's going on. Tell me your side, I'll tell you my side, and there has to be a willingness to meet halfway. I think that Jupiter and Gemini. Now, I do realize that I am giving you the higher expression of this energy, and I genuinely believe that it can turn out that way. And the reason for that is that we're talking about two air signs, which are Gemini and Libra. These signs are very logical. These signs are about looking at things for what they are. We have the energy of Virgo also all week long, right? So let's look at things exactly for what they are. And no matter the type of relationship, there is an element of negotiation. There is an element perhaps of renegotiation, considering the month that we're coming from, considering the first week of September that we're coming from. There is an energy and element of renegotiating. Let's reestablish the terms, right? If we thought that things were going to go a certain way, and now we realize that, circumstances don't lend themselves for that. Okay, how do we change the plan without there having to be a complete rupture? And this is why it's so important to remember not to lean straight into fear, but to remember that the cosmos is always gifting us with the opportunity to repair. And if there is anything that the South Node in Libra has taught us, is that the best way to overcome codependency is by actually having the difficult conversations that lead to repair and the actual intimacy that we want to experience in our relationships, whether personal or professional, because professional intimacy looks like we get to have an honest and open conversation and relationship with one another without needing to sue each other and cut each other off and go behind each other's backs. We need to be willing to look at things for what they are, and whatever we begin to take personally, bring it back to ourselves and ask ourselves, why is this triggering me? Why is this activating me? What is there for me to learn from here? Do you see how that gives us the ability to discern what's what? Another thing with that Venus trine Jupiter and Gemini is it's a great weekend. That weekend is a great weekend to meet with people, to chat with people, to be around people that you really enjoy being around. Great for collaborating. It's just an energy of being around people that bring you a sense of joy, a sense of belonging, wonderful conversations, wonderful creative ideas and energy. So may that be of service. Don't forget to purchase your eclipse guide, and I will talk to you next week. Much love to you all.